Recorded Books and One Click Digital present The Battle for Spain, The Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, by Antony Beevor, narrated by Sean Barrett.
Part 1. Old Spain and the Second Republic. Chapter 1. Their Most Catholic Majesties. On an unsurfaced road in Andalusia or Estremadura, one of the first automobiles in Spain has broken down. In the photograph, a young man grasps the steering wheel. He is not very good-looking, due to a large nose and enormous ears. His brilliantined hair is parted in two, and he has a moustache. The driver of the car is King Alfonso XIII. On either side, men are pushing hard at the mudguards. Their faces are burned a deep brown by the sun, and they are poorly dressed, without collars or ties. They are making a big effort. In the background, 3 or 4 figures dressed in suits and hats observe the goings-on. A rider, perhaps a local landowner, has reined in his horse. On the right, a landau drawn by 2 horses, the reins held by a uniformed coachman, waits ready to rescue the monarch if the car's engine fails to restart. The caption announces that the king's greatest wish is to maintain direct contact with his people. Few images better represented the extremes of the social and economic contrasts of Spain in the early part of the 20th century. But perhaps the most striking aspect of the photograph is the way the peasants and the king must have seemed like foreigners to each other in their own country. Spain, with its stern tradition of rule from Madrid, was becoming increasingly turbulent at that time, both in the countryside and in the big cities. So not even the tidy-minded could say later that the Spanish Civil War simply began in July 1936 with the rising of the nationalist generals against the Republican government. That event signaled the greatest clash in the conflict of forces which had dominated Spanish history. One of those antagonisms was evidently between class interests, but the other two were no less important: authoritarian rule against libertarian instinct, and central government against regionalist aspirations. The genesis of these 3 strains of conflict lay in the way the Reconquista of Spain from the Moors had shaped the social structure of the country and formed the attitudes of the Castilian conquerors. The intermittent warring against the Moors, begun by Visigoth warlords in the 8th century, finally ended in 1492 with the triumphal entry into Granada of Isabella of Castile and her husband Ferdinand of Aragon. For the Spanish traditionalist, that event marked both the culmination of a long crusade and the beginning of the country's civilization. This idea permeated the Nationalist Alliance of 1936, which continually invoked the glory of Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic monarchs, and referred to their own struggle as the Second Reconquista, with liberals, Reds, and separatists allotted the role of contemporary heathen. With the feudal army forming the prototype of state power, the monarchy and warrior aristocracy retook possession of the land during the fight against the Moors. In order to continue the Reconquista, the aristocracy needed money, not food. The cash crop which could provide it was merino wool. Common land was seized for sheep grazing, which not only had a catastrophic effect on the peasants' food supply, but also led to soil erosion, ruining what once had been known as the granary of the Roman Empire. Few people were needed to tend the sheep, and the only alternative to starvation was the army and, later, the empire. In the Middle Ages, Spain was estimated to have a population of about 14 million. At the end of the 18th century, it was a little over 7 million. Castilian authoritarianism developed from a feudal military emphasis to one of political control by the Church. During the 7 centuries of the Reconquista's uneven course, the Church's role had been mainly that of propagandist for military action and even of participant. Then, in Isabella's reign, the warrior archbishop was superseded by the cardinal statesman. Nevertheless, the connection between church and army remained close during the rapid growth of Spain's empire, when the crucifix was the shadow of the sword over half the world. The army conquered, then the church integrated the new territories into the Castilian state. The power which was exerted over the population was an irresistible force, backed by the threat of hell and its earthly foretaste in the form of the Inquisition. A single denouncer,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?